The first official Michigan Wolverines football team was formed in 1879, but the game had been played in Ann Arbor as early as 1870. In April 1870, members of the freshman class announced that they had formed a football club. That club went on to defeat a team from the Union School of Ann Arbor by a score of 7-5. The Wolverines would go on to play their first intercollegiate game against Racine College in Chicago in May 1879. Irving Cainpond, who would later become a renowned architect, scored the first touchdown in Michigan football history in the game. The Wolverines were victorious, beating Racine College by a score of 1-0. The team played its second game against the University of Toronto in 1879, and the two teams tied in what is possibly the first college football game ever played outside of the United States. This would be the start of the team's growth as a program, and Michigan would go on to become a major force in American football. It is important to note that early college football was more closely related to British rugby, the sport from which it originated. The team played its first game in Ann Arbor in 1883, but it would not be until 1893 that the Wolverines began playing their home games on the University of Michigan campus. The team was also one of the first in the United States to be racially integrated. George Jewett became the first African-American player in 1890. He would go on to become one of the leading stars in early Michigan football. The Wolverines compiled an unbeaten record of 12-0 and outscored their opponents 258-12 from 1884 to 1887. The team allowed their opponents to score only 2 points during that time. Those years saw the team begin to develop a strong reputation as a powerhouse in the West. The team was also known for its commitment to teaching other teams how to play. In November 1887, Michigan traveled to South Bend, Indiana, where it taught Notre Dame students how to play the game and participated in the first Notre Dame football game. Although the Wolverines were the first to play Notre Dame, the two schools have become fierce rivals throughout their history. Before the turn of the century, the Wolverines faced a variety of challenges to build their program. Most colleges and universities had not yet established varsity football teams, and Michigan found itself often facing club teams or other small colleges. In 1885, a team from Windsor, Ontario, Canada, challenged Michigan to a game on roller skates. The two teams ultimately met at the Palace Rink in Ann Arbor and played a game that was not officially recorded in the Wolverines' history. The 1891 season saw the first coach hired for the Wolverines. Frank Crawford was an 1891 graduate of Yale University who was enrolled at the University of Michigan School of Law. While there, he served as both the unpaid coach and a substitute player for the Wolverines. It has been reported that Mike Murphy, a nationally known athletic trainer, was also the head coach that year, though the exact details of the coaching responsibilities are unclear. Crawford would leave the program after 1891 to focus on his studies and career. The Wolverines played their first games against future rivals in 1892. The team competed against the University of Wisconsin, Northwestern University, and the University of Minnesota. Later in the year, the Wolverines played the University of Chicago for the first time. The game was played in Toledo, Ohio, with a crowd of 1,500 spectators. Michigan won that first matchup by a score of 18-10. It was in 1894 that William McCauley was hired as the Wolverines coach. McCauley was a standout player at Princeton and had been part of their championship team in 1893. He led Michigan to an impressive 17-2-1 record in his 2 years as coach. In 1894, the Wolverines played Cornell University in Detroit, where they won a game that would be seen as a major turning point for the program. The Wolverines had never defeated one of the elite Eastern teams before, and this win solidified their reputation as a top-tier program. This would be the first time the team was able to defeat a major power from the East Coast. The team's victory sparked a frenzy in Ann Arbor, with 2,000 students traveling to Detroit to watch the game. Upon returning to Ann Arbor, the team was greeted by a large crowd of 3,000 students who cheered the team through the streets and held a mass meeting in their honor. The game was also significant because it was attended by the largest crowd ever in Detroit, showing the growing popularity of the sport. The following year, in 1895, the team was acknowledged as the Western football champions. The Wolverines compiled an 8-1 record, outscored their opponents 266-14. That same year, however, the team suffered a 4-0 loss to Harvard, one of the dominant teams in the country at the time. Despite the loss, the game highlighted Michigan's growing reputation as a serious contender in the national landscape of college football. The team was officially recognized as the Western champions in 1898 after defeating the Chicago Maroons in a hard-fought game that ended with a score of 12-11. It was a thrilling game that solidified the team's status as champions. After the game, Louis Elbel, a student at the University of Michigan School of Music, was inspired to write the iconic fight song, The Victors. The song celebrated the Wolverines' victory and has since become a beloved anthem for the entire University of Michigan. Elbel was said to have been moved by the energy and enthusiasm of the team and its supporters. He started composing the song at his sister's house and finished it on the train ride back to Ann Arbor. Elbel's song, originally called The Victors' March, made its debut in the spring of 1899 and was even performed by John Philip Sousa in a concert at University Hall. The Wolverines were among the founding members of the Western Conference, which would later become the Big Ten Conference. The conference was formed by representatives from 7 Western universities in April 1892. The conference played a key role in solidifying the Wolverines' rivalry with the Chicago Maroons, and it led to the team playing other rivals, including the University of Minnesota and Ohio State. The team's first game against Ohio State occurred in 1897, and the Wolverines won by a score of 34-0. In 1896, the teams played their game indoors at the Chicago Coliseum. The game was also the first college football game to be played under electric lights. This was a significant event in the history of the sport, and it demonstrated the increasing popularity of football. The game was also a testament to the Wolverines' commitment to innovation and finding new ways to improve the game. The two schools went on to develop a fierce rivalry known as the 10-Year War, where the two teams competed for the national championship title. The Wolverines had their first encounter against Notre Dame in November 1887. The game, which was played on the Notre Dame campus, saw the Wolverines teach the Notre Dame team how to play football. The Wolverines went on to win the game by a score of 8-0. The two teams played again in April 1888, and Michigan won again, this time by a score of 26-6. The two schools went on to develop one of the most intense and storied rivalries in college football. The teams played several times in the 1890s, and Michigan always came out on top. It wouldn't be until the 1940s that the two teams would begin to face each other again, showing the strength of their rivalry. The rivalry between Michigan and Notre Dame is one of the most enduring and passionate rivalries in college football, and its origins can be traced back to the early years of the sport in the late 19th century. The two schools have produced some of the most iconic players and coaches in the history of the game, and their games are always anticipated with great excitement. The Wolverines had one of the most successful stretches in their history in the 1890s, winning many games and establishing a strong reputation as a powerhouse in the sport. The team went undefeated in 1898, winning the first Western Conference championship in the school's history. The team was led by Gustav Ferbert, a former star player at Michigan, who served as head coach from 1897 to 1899. During Ferbert's 3 years, the team compiled an impressive record of 24 wins, 3 losses, and 1 tie. Ferbert helped solidify the team's culture of excellence. The team's 1898 victory over Chicago led to the writing of the fight song, The Victors. But that victory also saw the emergence of a star player in William Cunningham. Cunningham was a center who played an important role in the team's success, and he was also recognized as an All-American after the season. In fact, Cunningham was the first Michigan football player to be named a first-team All-American. He was also the team's captain, and he led the team to a remarkable season. The team's 1898 championship season was a watershed moment in the history of the Wolverines, and it established the program as a national power. The 1890s also saw the team play the first games in many of its most historic rivalries, and it laid the foundation for its future success.